the end, you just think, is this really me? Is this really what I enjoy? And it wasn't. And within about a year, I was like, you know what, I've had enough. Like, I can't do this. I have a different vision, and I'm going to take that vision elsewhere. I said, keep all that stuff. Whatever I invested, just give me that, and I'll go. It's a hell of a journey. If you can neither accept the situation as it is and you can't change it to suit you, then you have to leave the situation. It's really that simple. So not only were we looking for a place to live, but we'd also started this. I'd come out of a business that was giving me a small income, and that income was also kind of gone and starting again. So we ended up living in a police station. And I don't think I could have done it without Gemma. Both our lives actually were in a bit of chaos, and we definitely helped each other, and we were making cash money, passing that money on to the landlord at the end of the month. So it was like a challenge, how much furniture could we sell in the month to then be able to have enough money to pay the rent. Honestly, I think, above all, as hard as those times were, they were the most magic times for me. They really were. The only thing we know about life is we're born, we die, and in between we improvise. We're all going to get to the same place. It's just, do you choose the challenging route of hardship, or do you go the easy route? If you choose the challenging route, when you reach the end result, you are a fuller, more content, and more wholesome person because of it. And I feel like that is the purpose of this journey.
Many people see the final product, the successful Jiu-Jitsu Academy, the strong community, the man who looks like he's got it all figured out. But behind it was years of uncertainty, setbacks, starting over, walking away from security, and learning to trust intuition over comfort. This is Ibby Adem's story, where we explore risk, resilience, reinvention, and having the courage to build something from nothing, while still remembering to have fun along the way. If you enjoyed this one, support the mission, please kindly subscribe and leave a review. It helps the show grow, and that means that we can reach more men who are navigating that messy middle of growth and support them in becoming more self-led. Thank you so much. I'm Harrison, and this is the Growth Voyage Podcast. Enjoy. Okay, the red light is on. Ibby.
Morning.
Welcome to the show, brother.
Welcome. Thank you. Yeah, it's great to be on.
Yeah, well, it's great to have you on. You're very welcome. And yeah, I mean, on the surface, when we're looking at what you've created with the resistance, jiu-jitsu, so pretty cool creation, right? I mean, you've built a great community, and you're black belt yourself. So it might be easy for people who would have just met you to kind of see that and think, oh, wow, yeah, this guy's got it together. He's got everything sorted. But what I want to know is, what has been the journey to get you to that place?
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about, you mean the end result? Meaning you walk in through the doors today and you see what you've got, what we've got, and you see the people and the crowd and the energy. It's a hell of a journey. I mean, back in the day, I used to be in finance for many years, like nearly 10 years, 12 years, doing management accounts, working for a media company, actually. It was really fun. I really enjoyed it, to be fair, but there came a point where it just wasn't me, and the hours were crazy, and I started to lose a love for it. And the people I was working with were amazing, but in the end you just think, is this really me? Is this really what I enjoy? And it wasn't. So we spent a bit of time kind of trying to find out how to get out, how to make a change. But anyway, bottom line, we opened our first academy in East Finchley which was myself and 2 other guys. And that was brilliant. Like, it started off really well. It was a tiny little place. That was kind of where everything started to build up. We brought jiu-jitsu in, we had Thai boxing, we had a bit of everything. And then we very quickly started to outgrow that space, just because it wasn't a huge space, and we were getting more and more interest, and we were in a really good position in East Finchley. And it came to a point where, after, say, I don't know, probably about 5 years, 6 years, we kind of took the decision to expand and look for another venue. And we found another venue in East Barnet, I think it's East Barnet. And that was the Barnet Combat Academy, actually, which I was part of. So
is that right?
Yeah. So initially it was East Finchley Combat, and there was 3 of us. And then one of the partners left because there was a dispute with the other partner, and blah blah. It was a whole thing, and he just wanted to get out. And in the end, he got out, and then there was just myself and one other guy, and we went off and we set up Barnet Combat Academy. So negotiated the lease and everything else, and we set it all up. And within a year of being there, I was just, I don't know that I can carry on doing this here for another 10 years on the lease, just because it wasn't really, I had a different image in my head. I mean, there were other factors involved, but ultimately what I saw as being the energy, the style, the creation that I wanted, the family vibe, it just didn't feel that way. And it was then that I realized there's a big difference between certain types of, I wouldn't say people, but the disciplines bring different types of energy, right? So, and I Thai boxed for years. I Thai boxed for like 10, 12 years under the Minotaur gym. It was where I first met Alan Witten. So if you don't know Alan Witten, big shout out to Alan Witten, dear friend of mine, jiu-jitsu black belt. And when I was Thai boxing, you meet some really cool guys. Everyone's cool in all these sports, but when you're doing jiu-jitsu, the way we had it working at the time was that both the jiu-jitsu and the Thai boxing was kind of mixed on the same floor. So when you're trying to do jiu-jitsu and you've got instructors trying to talk to you and explain the move and blah, blah, you've got guys smashing pads and banging bags. It was just chaos for me. I just couldn't, I couldn't think. And within about a year, I was like, you know what, I've had enough. Like, I can't do this. I have a different vision, and I'm going to take that vision elsewhere. So I spoke to my business partner at the time, and he was like, look, I'll buy you out. So I said, okay, just all I want is whatever I initially invested. I don't need to, value the business or anything like that. Just whatever I invested, just give me that. And then that pretty much all went to fixtures and fittings anyway, to fix the place up. Mats, all that kind of stuff. I said, keep all that stuff and just give me what I invested and I'll go.
Well, there's a couple elements I'd like to touch on there.
For sure.
That's really interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That kind of backstory. Well, there's 2 elements. I think the first one is kind of this sense of like energy that you created and how it was not aligned with the vision that you had. I think there's something about energy, as you described. It's a very like real thing. It's like, how do people feel when they walk in? How do you feel? And I think that's such an important part of any business, not to mention your life generally, the people you hang around with. So I wonder if it's also a matter of, well, if you create this energy, you're going to attract similar types of people because you've created it with that vision in mind. So I'd love to hear about when you kind of got in tune with that, but then also that step to kind of walk away from something which I imagine was quite a big project at the time and perhaps gave you some purpose in a way.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, actually. So at that time in my life when I'd eventually, I was discontent for a while in the business, and that was what it eventually obviously instigated the move. So there's three things. Once I met a guy called Yogi James. Right? He's a yoga guy and was teaching somewhere locally. A friend of mine took me with her to train with him. Really cool guy. And he said, look, there's three things. Whenever you're making a decision to do something, there's three things to consider. One is, can you accept the situation as it is in its entirety? So you fully accept it. But the fact that I was discontent there meant that there was something that was niggling me. Right? I couldn't accept it. Whether it was the energy of the place, whether it was the people we had in, whether it was a business partner, whatever. So there was definitely something I couldn't, I didn't like. The second thing he said was, can you alter the situation so that it's manageable? So if, let's say, we go out for dinner and you keep stealing all my food, I keep saying, Harrison, listen, if we're going to go out for dinner again, you've got to stay in your lane. You eat your food and I'll just eat my food. And then we have a discussion and it's sorted. Now we keep going out for dinner. But that wasn't an option. I put a few options across and tried to move things around, and it just was still niggling me. And then the third thing is, if you can neither accept the situation as it is and you can't change it to suit you, then you have to leave the situation. It's really that simple. And it saves so much time when you just go through those three rules, because you could procrastinate for years, and for what? So in the end, within the year, I realized that it wasn't the place, the energy wasn't right there, the vision long-term wasn't what I had envisioned. And plus on top of that, I'd met Gemma, who's my current girlfriend. And we've now been together for like 8 years. And when we met then, she was a real big energy in my life. And the connection and the way we spoke and the way everything came together, she also, I guess in many ways, gave me the courage to say, yeah, actually, look, I'm having all these thoughts in my head, but now that I'm kind of verbalizing them and getting them out there, I guess we don't really look for the affirmation because we know it's there. Like, we know what we're feeling, but sometimes it's good to hear another perspective, right? And in the end, we decided that, well, she said that basically, yeah, I mean, your feelings are justified. What's the plan? Because I need to have a plan, right? So what I did was I looked around and just decided, look, if I get my money out of the business, then I can kind of float around for a little while. Some of the guys will leave and come straight with me, because this is what happens in academies, right? When you leave, certain people resonate to certain people. And I was worried. I was worried that we wouldn't be able to get enough people out or follow us or do what we wanted to do to then be able to actually put skin down.
Do you think that worry or fear, do you think that might have stopped you in the year prior to meeting Gemma? Was that what was
I
maybe
think
holding
so.
you back?
I think there must have been some of that. Yeah, I definitely think that having someone alongside you, or even if it's just a positive influence in your life, definitely gives you the encouragement to go ahead.
Yeah, I think there's definitely something about having someone you trust,
for sure.
Especially a strong woman, and can be very intuitive and is very good at reading energy as well. So they'll probably know it before even you do.
Yeah,
a lot of the time that something's off. Yeah,
that's right. So yeah, we went through that phase, and we decided to jump out. And what happened was, We ended up actually teaching across the road from that place in a place called the Aerial Attic, which was like a first floor aerial yoga type thing, which was a strange little setup. But we had some rollout mats that we'd lay out and then we'd store after the session. And then the area was being used by other people for other stuff. And we'd come in like 2-3 times a week and do some jiu-jitsu. And we started to build it up from there. And at the time, there was a lot going on actually, because at the time, my landlady had just met someone. She was single. And she'd met someone, and fast forwarding along, decided to then eventually get together, move in with him and sell the house. So she was like, listen, you guys have got to leave because I'm selling the house and it's being sold, I don't know, whenever it was. So we had, I think, about a month or 2 months to get everything ready and get out. So not only were we looking for a place to live, but we'd also started this, I'd come out of a business that was giving me a small income, and that income was also kind of gone and starting again. And it was, really difficult. And I'm lucky I had Gemma at the time, because actually what happened was Gemma moved in with me, and because she's from Southend. So then when she moved to London, and we got together, she was living with me, didn't have a place of her own. And we were having some great times. And when we had to leave our premises, we were stuck. We were like, I'm in a position where now I don't have the financial means to rent a normal flat out, because at the time I was living in an annex within someone's, like this studio. So the main house was over there, and I was living in an annex, and it was a beautiful annex, like ensuite bathroom, everything. It was lovely, all open plan, but it facilitated my life as it was at the time, and it was perfect. Once we separated from the business, we had to build up again. Every single bit of money was going to just paying rent on the premises, the academy. So it was very difficult to kind of pay any more than that for a flat or something else in the area. So we ended up living in a police station.
You know what?
In a police station. It's so weird. Now that I think about it, it makes me laugh, because and I don't think I could have done it without Gemma. I say that, I mean, I could have done it, but I mean, if I was with anyone else apart from Gemma, I don't think anyone else would have put up with it, because it wasn't bougie, it was a pure adventure. So yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm very keen to hear about this, but I think you've touched upon something there. Because I remember hearing in a recent podcast how men are disproportionately judged by how much they earn. Sure. And then women are disproportionately judged by their aesthetics.
Right.
And so I think there's a real beauty in your situation where you're able to almost build with somebody.
For sure.
And there's already that connection without all the external stuff. I think there's something really powerful about building something together.
I think you've really nailed it there, because when I met Gemma, as much as our energy was just on point, both our lives actually were in a bit of chaos, and we definitely helped each other to. I remember getting into Gemma's car once, and there was just nowhere for me to sit. There was like so much crap in the car. There was printers, and there was clothes, and there was shoes, and there was, anything that she could carry was in the car. And I'm like, this is a sign of a messy mind, and an upturned lifestyle. So she had a lot of things that was going on in her life, clearly that was kind of thrown in the air and hadn't yet settled. And I was here, and it wasn't my job or my inclination to kind of question or quiz what it was. I was happy that this energy had found me. We were getting on, and whatever it meant was we were both in the same situation, and we could grow from there. And it was purely just an adventure from that day on. Yeah.
I mean, there's something about that, right? It's like, I think that's really something quite powerful when you can be in a situation and it doesn't matter what's happening around you, but your mind is in the right place and you just see the beauty of it all. And I think by the sounds of it, having someone to do that with, man, it's, I think it's one of my favorite quotes. It's, don't pick a partner with whom you get or you really enjoy it during the good times. It's like, pick a partner who you'd love to roll with in the bad times. And it sounds like that was your situation.
Yeah, very much so. Like, I was very blessed. I mean, I'm quite an upbeat kind of guy. I'm very optimistic with things. Sometimes people say delusional. I just don't believe that if there's anything that you want that you can't achieve, you can achieve anything. Sometimes people think, say to me, oh, you've taken on too much, or you've done this, and I don't think that's going to work. I'm like, well, let's just see. If it's not going to work, it's not going to work for a reason. But what are those reasons? And then what defines those boundaries? And then can we get over those boundaries? It doesn't have to be straight away, but one by one. And eventually you just get closer to the prize.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a growth mindset, isn't it? It's an expansive mindset.
Exactly.
Okay, why? Instead of why can't I do this? Why can I? And again, just being open to the signs. I'm keen to dive into this police station and the story there, but I'd also like to know, how you kind of cultivated this mindset. Was it through going through challenging times beforehand as well? Like, or were you kind of brought up with those values or mindset? Like, where does that?
I think it's everything, Harrison. It's growing up. I had a great childhood. I was out all the time. Mum was very, and still is. They're still the same. They haven't changed. Mum's very caring, and she'll always put on a spread for you when you go around, and she's very hospitable, and she always, very welcoming with all my friends, all the time. Whereas my dad would make sure that we were outdoors, doing stuff, getting dirty, climbing trees, going out to, visit friends on bikes, and just being able to have that sense of freedom, and, after you've been brought up in that way, and your whole lifestyle has been growing up, has been to get on your bike. And I think Jason spoke about this last time he was on. He said, like, the first thing you do on a Saturday or on a Sunday would be to get on your bike, and half the day was spent trying to find your friends. Remember, he said something along those lines, right? And that rings so true, because we didn't have the technology or the WhatsApp or anything. You'd go to a park, you'd go to congregate where you normally congregate and hope some of your mates turn up. And then you'd go and you'd find Tony, or then you'd go and find Damien, and you'd go and find... So, having that meant that was almost an adventure for me every time we go out with our friends. And that kind of meant that regardless of, we didn't know where or how the day was going to end up, but you'd make your own journey, and no matter what happened, you'd have laughs on the way, and you'd come back and you'd say, frig, this is what we did. It was amazing today. We had an adventure. And then you grow up on things like the Goonies, Indiana Jones, Star Wars, and it's all like, everything's an adventure, growing up. So I think you cultivate that mindset very early on, and you resonate to things very early on naturally, we spoke about this last time, without outside interference, right? Because you're still very, not interrupted by the outside world. You're not influenced yet by the outside world and other people's opinions and stuff. You're just allowed to just grow up for a while. And then in addition to that, hardship, as you do grow up and as you do take on responsibilities and you do start to be influenced by what people expect from you, or potentially push you into the direction that they see would be better for you. You know, not in any bad way, but they're not any malicious things, but like they truly don't understand you. So they assume they know best for you. And they push you in those directions, and you start to lose your path sometimes, you know, and sometimes you're lucky and what you land is good. And sometimes you feel discontent, and you have to then apply your 3 rules. Do I accept it? Can I change it or adapt it? Or do I leave the situation? And then it resets you again. And yeah, we've had a few hardships, you know, from everything from divorce to, you know, trying to channel and protect the children, relationships, you know, having the kids still understand that even though you're from a divorced situation or family, like everyone's still family. You know, mum and dad still love you. Everything's good. Everything's this, and we help. You know, all that stuff's very challenging. And I think I don't think there's a true potential to achieve to get to your very best if you haven't gone through that struggle. Or some kind of struggle, you know. It's like 50 Cent, right? He's you know, the struggle and the pain and the winning thing that he alludes to in his song, which is so true. You know, there is no you know, real happiness and success without some kind of, you know, hardship. So it's a culmination of everything. You know, good foundations, same as jiu-jitsu, right? Good foundations. And then you build on that. Somewhere in the middle, you lose your way, or you try and find more about yourself, which then can lead you down a darker path. And then eventually you come through it. You know, it's like, there's a gentleman called, a movement specialist called Ido Portal. I listened to his podcast years ago, and he said one of the things that really struck me in his podcast was, he said, there's no rule book. The only thing we know about life is we're born, we die, and in between we improvise. That's it. And I think that pretty much summed everything up, because what it also does is it validates the fact that you can have a go. You can do what you want. You can try things out without having to be so rigid and follow a certain path, because there is no path. The path is what you make it. And that's what that sentiment, that quote meant to me. You know, yes, we're born, yes, we die, but everything in between is your journey.
I'm just sitting with that. There is no path. There is no path laid out for you. I think just sitting with that, it's very strong, isn't it? Because I feel like that's part of the man's journey, isn't it? You're kind of given a path or shown a certain path, and that's all you see. And all you see is all there is. So there's no other option until, as like your journey, you kind of, you feel something's off, and that is your path to take. Then it's yours. You've got the free will to do something with that. Do you kind of stay in this illusion that you feel like you have to stay here, or do you listen to that calling, that intuition, that feeling?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, I really resonate with that. And yeah, I also agree that, you almost need the hard times. You need the challenging times, because that's kind of, it's just a part of the man's journey. It's part of that, hero's journey, what we've discussed. Yeah, absolutely.
And you know, going back to what you just said with, you know, the path and kind of accepting, or not having a path, you know, not having the path and kind of having to meander around. Ultimately, what I guess a lot of your decisions, if not influence from outside, come from internal feelings, right? So like an intuition or a feeling. And if you roll with that, I think that it brings you closer to yourself, because you start to lay some kind of reliability to your own feelings, because the more you listen to yourself and how you feel, and the more you act on that, the more you get to be able to understand what your feelings are telling you.
Well, let's dive into this.
Okay.
Right. So what you've just described there, I imagine you get to know your voice, know that feeling through experiences. And I know you listed off a couple, let's say setbacks in your life, or they're perceived as setbacks at the time.
Yeah.
So do you think, looking back on those experiences, even perhaps starting up Barnet Combat Academy, maybe, where the vision didn't quite plan out where it wanted, and similar with like marriage, for example, was there perhaps a lack of knowing, or were you kind of in tune with yourself at that point? And what were the lessons that kind of came out of these experiences that led you to be able to better trust yourself, really, and take these kind of leap of faiths? Yeah,
sure. Interesting. So for sure that you're in my experience, in what I went through, was you have these feelings in yourself where you think, like, for example, you know what's right and wrong, like socially. So for example, me coming up and kicking a dog is socially not acceptable, right? At least in this community. But maybe in other countries, that would be a term of endearment. You just don't know. But, you have the base elements of right and wrong, and then everything else you have to kind of funnel into. And it's very similar to, in fact, I don't think you can separate them. I actually don't think they're separable. Whereas initially I thought they were two very different things. But decision making and trusting your intuition, right? So a lot of people, in my opinion, know what they need to do because their body's telling them to do it or not do it, depending on the situation. But they're so bad at making the decision that they won't do it, right? So, or they'll make the decision not to do it. So what I mean by that, you can see this in everyday life. Sometimes you'll go to, I'll just use an example of whatever, like a restaurant again. And you say to your girlfriend, what are you having? Oh, I don't know. And it gets to a point where they're so overwhelmed with having to make the decision of what they're going to eat. You say, well, what are you having? So I know exactly what I'm having. Bang. Oh, maybe if I order this, then I can also have a bit of yours. Because this is indecisiveness, right? And just making a decision needs practice. So the more you make decisions, the better you get at making decisions. Okay? The first thing to accept, and it's the same with gut intuition, is that it may not always be the best outcome for you. And so long as you accept that could be the case, then you're like, well, it may not be the best outcome, but I'm going to go down this route anyway. And I'm going to take that decision to do it. And let's see what happens.
I think it's the fear of making a decision that will kind of keep you back.
Exactly.
And, I think also on that point, as you suggested, your decisions might not always lead to the best outcome.
Not always.
That said, I think what really helped me with this was one of my good friends when I sat down with him for a coffee, and I was kind of going through a bit of a challenging period. Mm-hmm. And, I was saying, there's this decision and this one. And he was like, every decision's the right decision, because even if it's the wrong one, it will lead you to the right one. And I think that really lifted the pressure off me to kind of get stuff right. And it kind of ties in with your point about there is no right path. It's just different decisions. I mean, I've spoken to guys who've had deep ayahuasca trips, and they were just shown these two different avenues in life. They could either go this way, which was like have a family, have a kid, settle down somewhere, Or there was this one, which was kind of like a bachelor lifestyle in different continent and traveling the world. And there was no right or wrong. It was just two different paths. And you just kind of gave a look into each one.
And when you say there was no right or wrong, and it's it's ultimately two different paths leading to the same end, is that what we're alluding to? Or are we alluding to two separate paths? So if you had chosen to go down this way, you would have ended up here. And if you'd chosen to go this way, you'd have ended up here. One doesn't really know, does one? Like we have no idea. But in my opinion, and the safest opinion, in terms of being able to glue everything else together and be that person to make those decisions, you have to, in my mind, appeal to the fact that we're all going, like Ido Portal said, we're born, we die, and in between we improvise. So there's a definitive beginning and there's a definitive end place. So just going by that, let's assume that we all arrive at the same place. So therefore, the end result is set for all of us. We're all going to get to the same place. It's just, do you choose the challenging route of hardship, or do you go the easy route? And I definitely think if you choose the challenging route, when you reach the end result, you are a fuller, more content, and more wholesome person because of it. And I feel like that is the purpose of this journey. You know, we're here to become better versions of ourselves. So that's really what it comes down to. So whether the decisions I made, in some people's opinion, right or wrong, it was always going to happen. I was always going to end up where I am. And I've become that much better for learning to feel those sort of feelings that made me want to make a change. I got better at making decisions. And in that process, I've made myself a better person. And like you said earlier, your vibe now attracts your tribe. So now I've got people of the same energy around me. And that's really what the Academy is all about. You know, and man, when I go in there, there's people who have all been on a journey and people still on journeys. And a lot of them resonate to the Academy because of that. We're very hands-on, and obviously it's jiu-jitsu, it's hands-on, right? We're a very hands-on but caring bunch of guys and girls there. You know, everyone really resonates to people on a different level, you know. And like I said, I think that's just because, you know, initially the good bunch of guys that came through with us, it was built upon, you know, it was recommendation. It was our friend wants to come. So apples and trees, you know, if you've got a friend, you know, I feel like I might get on with him because I get on with you, you know, and it's apples and, you know, they don't fall too far. So it's kind of that concept. It's very rare actually that we take, or, you know, we don't have the membership online. You can't buy it. You know, you have to come through a trial, and then that trial could be a day, 3 days. It could be a week. It could be a month. There's options. But ultimately, once you've purchased those once, you can't go back and purchase them again. You can't be a continual regular attendee without signing up. So by that time, we've decided whether your energy is good or bad. You know, or whether, not so much if it's good or bad, but whether it resonates with ours, more to the point. You know, because you don't want to exclude people because you don't get on with them, because they may be a perfect fit for someone else. But does their energy resonate with what we've created? Or is it likely to throw it out?
And do you make that decision? Is that, again, just like a feeling? Is that what you get? And I think on that point as well, I think this kind of ties in with like the man's journey as well, and why we have to go through struggle, because it's through the struggle that we find out who we really are. Mm-hmm. And I think once you find out who you are, as you were alluding to, that's where you kind of operate like a bit of a magnet. And instead of you trying to find your tribe, I think your tribe just kind of naturally finds you because you're more connected to yourself and to your purpose.
Yeah, I mean, it's the whole concept of, I mean, I've said this before a couple of times with other things that we deal with, but like if a if a flower doesn't grow, you don't get a new plant, you don't change the flower, you change the environment. You know, maybe you've got it sitting in the shade and what it needs is a bit of light and suddenly it blossoms. So you don't, the key is, and this was one of the things actually that resonated with me in one of the reasons why personally I decided to leave Barnet Combat. There was too much people control. So what I mean by that is there was too much of personalities trying to be too loud and too bolshy and trying to control the environment, but more so the people. So to say, oh, you know, you like this and you like this and and there's one person there, and you can't control people. What happens is you have to create an environment like you alluded to, and the energy from that environment will attract people who want to be in that environment. Once that's been established, the beauty of that is the environment will grow on its own and you can up and leave and nothing will be lost. So for example, last year I was in Brazil, right? I was for a cumulative time of about 4 months. The environment we created and the love the guys have for the academy and for the instructors and for each other was that everyone turned up on time, everyone helped clean up, everyone was doing sessions, you know, everyone was supportive, you know, if there were any problems, they would all look out for each other. You know, if there was problems, they'd message me and they'd keep me in tune. And this is part of a great environment. It's a family. Everyone's taking part. Whereas if you start micromanaging people, the minute you're gone, it's, while the cat's away, like it's carnage.
Oh, that's a huge thing, is kind of this trust, isn't it? And again, I think this all ties in together, because that trust, it's, yeah, part of it is kind of out of your hands, but then also I think a big part of it is like you kind of cultivate that quite naturally with people. And yeah, it's very, very interesting the way you've described it, because again, I've been to some gyms where again, you know, like when I'm traveling and stuff, and there's a lot of tourists, and it's like it's very different energy, and yeah, it's a bit standoffish, and it doesn't quite feel right. And then been to others where it's also like great culture, although it's very like, it's quite rigid, you know, you kind of line up and belt order and stuff, and there's a lot of protocols and like you got to do it this way. And yeah, I think that can work for some people, but I think what's amazing about what you've created is it's kind of just there, but it's almost like it's like an invisible kind of like energy or trust.
Strange,
it's like it's like people just do it, but you're not kind of telling them to do it. And I think there's something quite powerful about that.
And I don't think you need to tell them to do it, because the people that have arrived are the people that are well-intended, emotionally led in a positive way, you know, very empathetic, also driven, also caring. You know, even, you know, you look at guys like Mike Hawkins and people say to you, oh, Mike, you know, it's quite difficult to talk to, or if anything, Mike's changed a lot over the years that he's been with us. I think the environment's broken Mike down to become a softer guy. Even though he's just getting older now. But Mike's very caring. He's very caring in different ways, in that he wants to teach and he wants to hold you responsible for the best version of you that you can be. And I think having someone like that, who not only holds you responsible, but gives you the tools to be not just better at jiu-jitsu, but just better in general, to, you know, be comfortable, like Fabio Gurgel says, be comfortable with the uncomfortable and persevere and keep consistent. These are all attributes for life. And Mike brings that in droves, you know, so it doesn't necessarily have to be an atmosphere when we talk about a caring, good energy. Everyone's not softly, you know, it's not this kind of soft, wet kind of atmosphere I'm talking about. These guys are killers. You know, amazing on the mat. You know, European champions, whatever, you know, national champs. But they have the ability to invest energy in you, and by default, energy comes back. And that's what I'm talking about. You know, that sharing of values and energy, and looking out for your training buddies and all that kind of stuff. And you know, and in turn, the academy in itself. You know, like the other day we were training. You know, I share the room with Gemma, because Gemma runs the Pilates, and then we've got another guy, and then there's some guys upstairs who do gymnastics and blah, so on and so forth. So the building's shared, and someone left a tap on, and I put it in the group the other night. But it's that kind of stuff where, you know, one of our other guys goes and he turned the tap off on a previous night. He's like, oh mate, there was water all over the floor, blah blah, just letting you know. And people care. Like, people come back and they say, listen, can you know, and they, you know. And I've had this lots of times where people have said, oh, if you're doing this, can I come and help you? Can I do this? It is one big fact. Like, I'm blessed. We are blessed, you know.
Well, I mean, even that idea, I mean, that vision right there sounds, it's just beautiful. People might be listening to that, just having your place next to that Pilates studio, with your missus. I think that's fantastic. So I kind of want to tie up that story, because last time we touched upon that arc, we've left the academy.
Yep.
Barnet Combat Academy.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You're in a police station.
Yeah.
So how do we get from this beautiful vision of sharing a building with your missus and this community and tribe? How did we get there from a police station?
Right. Amazing. Yeah. So this was me and Gemma had not been in a relationship for too long. But yet everything moved really fast, in that it kind of felt like I'd known her for years. Energy was good. Everything was great. You know, we were vibing, and this situation happened with my landlady. Remember, so she's selling the house. We need to get out. So long story short, we were looking around for somewhere else to live. The budget wasn't really providing anything of any availability, really. I mean, I couldn't, unless I was going to go back in and kind of house share again, which I wasn't really feeling. But Gemma was all game. She was like, yeah, whatever, you know? And it was a big shift, actually, from having your own kind of annex like this, where you're not disturbed and you've got your own space and you're good. You can have your own people around, your own family around, kids, whatever. To then house sharing, where you're living in a small room with other people, sharing a kitchen, sharing a bathroom, sharing, you know. It was a big step. But the thing that I think allowed me to do it, and allowed Gemma to come along for the ride as well, was that both of us knew very quickly that the long-term vision was going to kick in, and this was always only going to be temporary. Always. It was just a stepping stone. So what happened was, we contacted a company called VPS, who do a thing called Living Guardians. I don't know if you know what Living Guardians are, but for those that don't, basically on an empty property, so empty properties become available. So for example, the police station, the council had decided that it was up for sale. It was no longer used, and it was ready to be purchased by some developer. But as usual, these things take time, and planning applications have to go through, and the usual, you know, bureaucracy that has to happen, and greased palms and everything else. And what happens is, in order to safeguard the building from squatters, they basically do the place up very, very minimalist, and make sure that it's got electricity, running water, and then they rent out the rooms. So we were living, and you pay next to nothing. Like, it's like 400 quid a month, something silly like this. It's become more expensive over the years because I think more and more people are doing it now, but because London is so expensive to live in. The caveat is that you only have 1 month's notice. So you need to be ready to leave at the drop of a hat. And if that means you can find another place, then great. If for us, I was very lucky actually. I am very lucky. I'm lucky I've got my sister and my family nearby. So there was a time in between moving from, I can't recall exactly when it was, but maybe from the police station to the new place, and it was vice versa. I can't remember exactly, but there was a time when I stayed with my sister for like 2-3 months, or maybe a couple of months. Me and Gemma stayed with her in her house, with my brother-in-law and my nieces. But knowing that you have that backup, like family should never turn me away if I needed her, and vice versa. And my parents, I could tell them tomorrow, look, I want to come back and stay here for a few months or 6 months, and it would never be a no. It would never be a no. When you know you've got that as a backup, you're kind of more prepared to take some risks. Yeah, because the landing's always going to be, at the very worst, you're just going to live in a nice, comfortable bed somewhere else, right? You're never on the street. So it wasn't too much of a, I don't want to claim that it was like, it was a real risk. And it wasn't. It was more of an adventure. And we took up the offer and it was also really telling for me at that point in my relationship with Gemma to see how this was going to pan out. And I think this was a real telltale sign to see if we were connecting. It was amazing because I don't want to categorize, or generalize. So maybe I'm wrong, but in my opinion, maybe most people would not have gone down that route because we were sharing a police station and living in a I think they were called an interview room. We had 2 interview rooms. That one was our bedroom, and then the other one was our walk-in wardrobe. And from the very first day we moved in, we had this list of kind of regulations. You can do this, and you can't. Most definitely cannot do this. Even if we wanted to hang a picture on the wall, we had to seek approval so as we didn't damage the walls. And the first thing we did was we knocked a massive hole through the wall and made it so that we didn't have to leave our room to go to the walk-in wardrobe. We smashed a hole through the wall as big as that door, put a cupboard in front of it, and when you open the cupboard, you'd open another latch that would open up and it would lead into the other room, and it was hidden. So when the inspectors would come, we'd open the cupboard and they'd be like, okay, you got like your aftershaves and everything else. But then when you unlatched it from this side, you'd open it. It was a massive hole. It would go through to the other side. And you know what? She was game. Like, she was like, let's do this and let's do that. And, and we just kind of became children again for like I think we were there for like 3 to 6 months or something. And we just became like kids. The people we stayed with were so random. We had one guy called Pete. He was, I think he was a Romanian guy. Oh no, he was Polish guy. He was a carpenter. Actually, he was a carpet layer. So we ended up calling him Car Pete, because Car Pete. And that was his nickname. And he was also a part-time, he was very religious, and he'd do part-time, what's the word? He had a fiberglass bath that you'd step into, and he'd do baptisms, and what's the other one that they used? Exorcisms. Crazy. Man, I'd come home at night and you'd just hear this exorcism going on in the next room. It was just insane. And another guy down the hallway, he was, I don't even know what his name was. We ended up calling him Magic Mike because he'd just walk around topless all the time, every time you saw him.
Well, it just sounds all like such an adventure, and it kind of ties back in with what you were talking about before, about like your childhood and kind of just not really knowing what's going on and just kind of living it day by day. It's magical. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds really magical.
Yeah. And I think, I think Gemma had a very similar upbringing, in that adventures and outside and she was never really at home, like kind of mostly at friends' houses, playing and doing stuff. And yeah, it did take me back, and that freedom of, even though we were struggling financially, we were struggling a lot. And we didn't have a place we could really call home. In the sense that there was nothing secure. But the time we spent there, every day was an adventure. Every day was a laugh. Every day was something that we would just be in stitches about. And I think it really brought us closer together. I think it really accelerated our relationship from that point on, and eventually from then on, we got the call to eventually leave. The planning permission had gone through, so they wanted to evacuate the building and everyone had to leave. And there were more characters that I could talk about. That's a whole podcast in itself. But we left, and that was when I believe we shacked up at my sister's for a bit. And we moved into Moxon Street. So Moxon Street was the next venture for us. It was taking the 3 days a week that we were renting at the aerial attic yoga studio to a more permanent full-time facility. So we found an office in a block of offices at Moxon Street, at the bottom of Moxon Street. The guys will remember it. And it was a room probably about 1,200 square foot with a big office in it. And for a while, we stayed at my sister's, but then we had a conversation with the landlord and said, look, we've just set up here. And within a few months of us setting up, COVID hit. So they were like, right, you got to shut. So Gemma had a conversation with the landlords and said, look, we're going to close. You guys, apparently there was certain businesses that could stay open. So some of the businesses in the building could stay open. But the guys who owned the buildings were running it, the warehouse and the building itself. They were like, we don't want to be here because like COVID's on, petrified. We don't need to be here. We don't need to be in an office altogether managing the building. So I think the call came at the right time. Gemma turned around and said, well, look, why don't we negotiate? We'll stay in the building. Put us down on the insurance policy as security. We'll live in the building. And that was such a squeeze for us because we went from the police station to again not having a place to stay. Understanding that my sister was putting us up, that was fine. And she'd never need to kick us out or feel the need to kick us out. But at the same time, I didn't want to impose on someone else's space for too long, right? And that was when the next round of adventure started. We were living in this massive warehouse under a tin roof. Man, it was so cold at night. It was insane. We'd literally sleep with like a jumper and a woolly hat. And you could hear the squirrels running around on the roof. It was just insane. But things happen for a reason, we weren't on the street, we had a place to live. We'd wake up in the morning, we'd go out, we'd make a breakfast, we'd do what we needed to do. We'd go to the high street in Barnet. And then, in the afternoons, classes would start. It was perfect. Eventually we knocked the office down and we made the place bigger. And we moved into another room where we set up a shower, a kitchen. It was basically the size of this room, maybe a bit smaller. Everything was in one room. So our shower unit, kitchen, bed, everything was in one room. And then what happened was the boys would get to realize that you're staying in-house. And then if ever they turn up early for a class, like by half an hour, they'd knock on your door. They're like, bro, come and have... And they'd sit down and we'd have a chat, or we'd have a coffee, or we'd have, and it was nice. Sometimes it would be a bit too much because like you just need that extra, you just need that time to just get your head together. Yeah, exactly. And it could be difficult at times, but generally it was always with good intentions, and you accepted it. And, it was lovely times, man. And we grew from that. And then, once we built up long story short, once we built up the gym from there and we got through COVID, that's a whole saga in itself. And we got out the other side where some academies had either downsized, some had even fallen off the table. We were still around. And I think we were only still around because we had the guys to support for sure. Like, you can't take that away from them. Everyone helped out. But also we reduced our overheads. We had no outgoings apart from the rent that we had to pay on the studio that we were renting. Suddenly we had no extra rent for living because we were living in the premises. So we had to adjust our lifestyle to be able to then keep the academy going and eventually grow from there again.
Well, it begs another question, for anyone who's got a big goal or a big ambition or a big vision, what are you prepared to sacrifice to make it happen, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Your space, security, whatever it may be. So yeah, real testament to that.
Yeah, it's difficult. And again, props to Gemma for getting us through COVID as well, because she's very much, the boys would come down sometimes to roll in certain, in a given kind of managed environment that was allowed at the time. Like, athletes were allowed to train with a bubble of, there was all these rules and regulations that we had to conform to, but we got through it. But whilst they were coming to train, we weren't. What we were doing was like going on Facebook, finding furniture and people, because the whole place had come to a shutdown, right? It was a standstill. People weren't allowed to go on holidays. So what you'd do, you'd drive down Totteridge Lane or these wealthier roads like Hadley Wood, and there'd be a skip outside. And the person's just basically said, well, you know what? I was going to spend 20 grand on a holiday, 30 grand on a holiday. I might just change my kitchen, or let me, give the bedroom a new set of cupboards or whatever. I don't know, whatever they're going to do. And they'd get rid of some like beautiful furniture. They'd just throw it out. So we were grabbing this furniture, putting it in the van, coming back, overhauling it, refurbing it, or giving it a lick of paint, putting it on Facebook, selling it. And that's all we were doing throughout COVID. For 2 years, we were furniture building. And a lot of that was like Gemma's drive, Yeah. And we were making cash money and then passing that money on to the landlord at the end of the month. So it was like a challenge, how much furniture could we sell in the month to then be able to have enough money to pay the rent, and with a little bit for food and whatever else,
It's so epic.
Yeah, it was mad. And then we had people like our members or family, whatever you want to call them. Nowadays, they're all friends and family. Some of them were cooking food, like Chris and his missus would cook food, and they'd be like, "Listen, I've cooked you this." I was like, "That's amazing," because we like, it was hard. Like, we didn't have money coming in on a regular. It wasn't like it was, I was like, "Oh, it's amazing. You've cooked us food, and man, that's going to last us for 2 days." And then Becky, Ethan's mum, her daughter was working in Tesco, so the staff would get like choice of food that was kind of going on, expiring that day or in a couple of days, and they'd be able to just take it home for free. So she'd come around with bags of shopping. Like, listen, these are going off in a few days, but they're good to go like now. So it'd be like, fantastic. So we'd be like cooking food. It was great. Like, everyone truly clubbed together. And that's what I'm saying about, they appreciated that we were grafting to keep that rent paid so that these guys could, in their hardest times as well, psychologically going through, a situation where we'd never been exposed to before, get a chance to let off some steam, get some rolls in for their own benefit, whilst we were here making sure it was all happening. And everyone was supporting each other. Honestly, I think, above all, as hard as those times were, they were the most magic times for me. They really were. And that's, I think, where we saw the most growth. Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah. Well, it all kind of just makes sense, doesn't it? This kind of power of community. It's just central to your story, really. Yeah. Yeah,
it seems that way.
Yeah.
Aligning with the right people and just having the energy and the willingness to just throw your hands in the air and just say, you know what? Let's see where the cards land. let's just go for it. You know, and that was the big part of it. And in the end, it was the once we came out of COVID, the landlords got a bit greedy and they started upping our rent, upping it. And we were a bit discontent because we were on a monthly rolling, so we could never really invest in the vision that we had. Because the more you invest, the more risk there was that you might not get it back because they might, you know, kick you out. We heard news that they were going to sell that property as well and turn it into flats, which is happening now. Actually, if you go down Moxon Street, the whole building's been demolished. Like they're going to start building. So instead of being pushed, we decided to jump. So we started looking around, found Queen's Road, and by the time we'd actually signed the lease, these guys had upped our rent so much for my studio and Gemma's studio that I think the difference between what we were paying there to what we've got now was only like a stone's throw difference. So with a few more members, we managed to get through. And, you know, immediately we were covering costs. We had a space that was 2, 3 times, 4 times bigger. And that was it. And then that was the new shape of the Academy, you know? Yeah, so Gemma had her studio, I've got mine. And then we've got Ashley, bless him, who's next door. He like helps us with the rent, pays a little rent. And he's got his kitchen design studio in there. If anyone wants any kitchens, A-Space Design, shameless plug, Ashley. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's great. And Gemma's doing the Pilates and she loves it, you know, and that as well, and it's in its own right, she was making more money than we were on the jiu-jitsu side for the first like 6 months to the year. And, you know, it was good that she could almost take a larger portion of the rent on whilst we found our feet and vice versa. Like we were there to support each other. Of course, we'd pay her back and eventually everything would settle back. But having that buffer zone between you was amazing.
So powerful, man.
Yeah, it was beautiful. And, you know, and eventually it built up and, you know, things like last year, you know, we both went to Brazil for work. You know, I mean, I was blessed to be able to go and train out there with these amazing guys. And Gemma was phenomenal. Like she went and studied Pilates, authentic Pilates, none of this, you know, fad stuff with Inelia Garcia, you know, the teacher of teachers, and watching her go through that journey and have to learn Portuguese because she delivered the whole thing in Portuguese. So it was just phenomenal. Like the amount of work she put in, and watching it was inspirational, you know?
Yeah. Well, there's you know, when you have someone by your side who's inspiring like that, it kind of pushes you to do better.
Yeah, you step up.
Yeah, you know, just constantly grow. That's growth, isn't it? Really. Wow, what a fascinating journey you've been on. I think before we go into the close, I'd love to touch upon this because you mentioned it a couple of times. Like you had this vision. It's quite clear, and I always talk about how important it is to have a vision of where you're going. It's like fundamental, I think, for a man, anyone really, but especially for a man, you've got to know where you're going, but then also constructing it as well. How did you guys come up with this vision? Was it pretty much what you have now? And like, talk to me about constructing this. Did you visualize it? Obviously the self-belief was always there, but yeah, I'd love to hear about the curation of this and just that belief that you were always gonna make it happen.
Yeah. I think the vision for me was always to kind of, especially after having 2 academies where we weren't a specialist academy. We were a mishmash of everything. You know, there was a bit of MMA, there was a bit of Thai boxing, there was a bit of jiu-jitsu, there was a bit of strength and conditioning. So, you know, the jack of all trades, master of none approach. It didn't really sit well with me. Like I wanted to home in for a long time. And also I wanted to just do what I want. You know what? I had a conversation with Mike Hawkins the other day, and he's traveling Asia at the moment. And he said he's come to the realization that he just wants to, he needs to find a way in his training where his focus is on longevity. But that aside, the reason for that was that he wanted to do all the things he loves doing for as long as he can. And this, I guess, with hindsight now, looking back, was what drove me towards this break. Was I wanted to do what I loved doing. And I loved doing jiu-jitsu at the time. I didn't want to do anything else. And as much as that might sound selfish, it was kind of like, I'm sure I can create an atmosphere where other people also want the same. They just want to do jiu-jitsu, right? And as much as you limit your market, money wasn't the driving factor for me. It never has been. Money's never been, don't get me wrong, look, it's required and you need it. And I don't want to feel like one of those guys that says, oh, you don't need money, because yes, you need money. But what I'm saying is it didn't turn me on as a person. It didn't strike any fires in me. Whereas some people are just really like, man, if they're making money, that's turning them on. It doesn't matter what they're doing, whether they're selling ice cubes or whether they're selling stocks and shares or building empires. If money's their main motivator, they can pretty much take their hand to anything so long as money's flowing in, and they'll find enjoyment in it. For me, it isn't. Like, I don't resonate to it at all. It doesn't. In fact, for me, it's a root of many evils. Money is. We can go down that route another time, but like, I try to distance myself from it as much as possible. But inevitably, the environment again that we create will bring the wealth and will bring the money. And depending on what you do with that money, will then be used for good. Okay, especially if it's not a driving force for you. Like, if money doesn't turn me on, I'm not going to squander it. I'm not going to use it selfishly. I'm not going to use it in ways which could be used on better things. Because it doesn't, and it's not a thing, I always invest back, or I'll try and do something else, or I'll try and put it to one side for a rainy day, or I'm not squandering that money because it doesn't mean anything to me. You know, it's not like I have to have what do you do with money? You buy stuff. That's what you do with it. I don't really buy anything. Like, I don't want it for anything. I have everything that I could possibly have. I have my good friends. I have my family. I have, my children. I have Gemma. I have, people around me that will feed me with knowledge every day. So, this was the driving force and this is still the driving force for this creation. Like, the environment, the only thing I worry about, like, and it's not really a worry, it's just another mindset that I need to get into, is we have a 15-year lease at the Academy. But really, we don't have a 15-year lease. We have 3 5-year leases, because every 5 years there's a break clause. So this time in July next year, we have to not renegotiate terms, but there's a break clause, right? A 2-way break clause. We're not going to we probably won't instigate that. And if they don't, then we're good to go. We carry on for the next 5 years. But when it all comes to an end and the lease expires, the whole thing, and it's finished, what happens? And I kind of feel like I want to leave something behind. So whilst you guys are training now every day, I have one intermediary goal, which is to eventually, I think this is my old age now, getting in, like, I'm nearly almost 50. And I don't have a place to live that I can call, like, that I own, personally. Like, so eventually I want that to happen. And just lay some roots down. But when the gym finishes, I would like there to be eventually something left for the generations. And I don't know how that's going to happen yet. But for a community where jiu-jitsu just carries on without me, even if it was in the same style of what's happening now, leave it in the hands of a few trusted, almost trustees that would manage it or oversee it, and it would just last generations and generations and just carry on. like a non-for-profit scenario where the people that manage it, they take a small salary because that's acceptable as a non-for-profit, but then everything else that it makes goes back into the business and just carries on. And if anything, it would be a non-for-profit now if it wasn't for the fact that in my life, I am going to get to an age where I might need to stop doing jiu-jitsu, or at least considerably slow down from the business. And I don't have another source of income apart from jiu-jitsu, and therefore need to secure how I'm going to live or where I'm going to live at some point. So with that in mind, I've got 10 years that I need to figure that out and get that working. But I feel like the last few years would be to set something up which lasts more than just me and this business. I'd like to leave something behind.
Yeah, it's kind of like a wider mission.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I haven't really
thing.
given that the most amount of thought. I know that it's something that I'd like to do. I wanted to set up a charity called Future Champions and do something for like kids and teens, especially with nowadays with teens. It's like, you know, things are becoming so much harder for them. You know, opportunities and, you know, and seeing the children that come through the academy and how much potential they've got and, you know, how good it is for them, both socially and for their mental well-being and everything else and physically. You know, it just drives me forward to hope that one day we can keep this going, or maybe even be a driving force to get something like jiu-jitsu on an actual curriculum in schools, you know, properly. You know, academies do have the ability to do that because they have autonomy from the normal structure of schooling system. But it'd be nice to have, you know, some kind of framework where it's taught everywhere, you know, or it can be a choice to be taught.
Oh yeah, I mean, just the amount of guys who, you know, were quite lost as a kids, got involved with the wrong crowds, but then found martial arts or found jiu-jitsu, and it kind of put them on the straight and narrow. Were surrounded by good people, and yeah, even like as an adult, you know, it's such an important outlet for many guys. And you know, I think what you've created, I know a lot of guys, you know, it's like, what would they do without it, you know? And
yeah, for sure.
I mean, it's had, you know, a huge impact on my life, you know, just having that.
It's amazing.
You know, just being able to have that outlet. And, you know, it's like one of the reasons, you know, Saturday is one of my favorite days of the week. Because, you know, not just because it's Saturday, because I love what I do, but it's like, you know, 9 a.m. sparring, you know, and it's like,
it's brilliant.
What a great way to start the day. It's so much fun. But yeah, I think it's just awesome hearing your story, and yeah, you know, what you're creating now, and, you know, still very much building as well to the wider vision. I'm interested because I know there might be people listening who, you know, they might be, I don't know, in their 40s or whatever. They think, you know, they might have missed the boat, or, you know, they've already had their chance at life and they've wasted their time. I just want to bring a bit of context to that. So around COVID time, because this is really when things started to shift for you. How old were you then, if you don't mind me asking?
COVID, so that was 2019, right? Yeah, so like 7 years ago. Yeah. So I was 40, almost 43. So I was 42, 43.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then the police station stuff, that would have been even before then. So,
yeah. So kind of like 40, 41.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that'd be very inspiring for a lot of guys listening to that. For sure.
Yeah, it's never too late. B, again, it would go back to that interim period where we're born, we die, and in between we improvise, right? That improvisation span can last as long as it takes, because it was only when, and it was funny because Mike lent me a book to read by, is it Richard Green? Maybe? Can't remember. Maybe it is. And I was mentioning to you earlier about going back to your childhood, and eventually, once you've gone through all the noise and the distractions, you come back to your childhood. You go back to look at what your childhood, what resonated to you as a child, what things you genuinely resonated to without any real knowledge as to why, but you were just drawn to things. So for me, it was being out with my friends. It was computer games, because the first lot of like computers that were coming through. It was, like I said, adventures. It was jiu-jitsu. So I started jiu-jitsu at 7, traditional jiu-jitsu, and being at work with my dad and all this kind of stuff that you lose yourself in between. And then I've come back to. So the academy was, again, the academy for me is being around my friends. The business itself is the adventure, because there's so many obstacles and hurdles I need to get around and get through every day. Like, again, that's a whole podcast in itself, like the amount of problems and issues, but then the amount of highlights as well, right? That's the adventure. And then also having a relationship where we're working almost not quite together, but like in the same, under the same roof, where we talk every day. We help each other out. If she needs stuff moving, we'll move it. We need stuff putting on, and I've kind of resonated back to my youth. I'm doing jiu-jitsu. I'm enjoying what I'm doing, and that can happen at any time. So it doesn't have, the younger you find it, the more time you spend in that zone. But for me, I found it like probably 35 was when I first set up my first academy, or maybe 32, 33. But it can come later on. It doesn't matter. It's just, you need to cancel the outside noise. You need to regroup. And this book that Mike lent me, and we literally opened it up like a couple of weeks ago, and we'd had the discussion with Gemma about how we've resonated to in our business to how we were as kids. And then the first 5 pages of this book was exactly that. And I gave it to her. I said, you need to read the first 5 pages of this book. She said, what is it? I said, oh God, we spoke about this last week. I was like, exactly. I said, isn't it amazing?
I think you've got to get it out of you. Whatever that thing was when you were a kid, you've got to express it somewhere.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I remember once seeing an article, I think it might have been or a video, it might have been by a guy called Danny McCaskill. So if no one's ever heard of Danny McCaskill, YouTube him. He's almost like, I'm going to undersell this massively. He rides mountain bikes, right? Or BMXs. But he's almost like a free runner on a BMX. So like the skills that he does. And I think it was him that said, never leave the playground. And that statement in itself is so powerful, because as a child and as you grow up, the playground is everything. And I don't mean just specifically the playground, but playing outdoors, exploring, all these kind of things happen. And as we grow up, we remove ourselves from that playground and we go into the workspace and the work environment and the sector that we, find. And I think it changes us as human beings, and we need that growth. But that growth is also where we find deception and the selfishness and the narcissism and the scheming because the working world, it can be a very devious place to be. But the playground gives you space to explore and be yourself and resonate to who you want to resonate to and be on the climbing frames that you want to attack and approach and play on. So never leaving the playground is very important. And if you do, and eventually you want to get back to the playground as quick as you can, in my opinion.
Well, you're a living example of that. Like, even hearing your stories of how you kind of saw everything through the eyes of a child in a way, like, in the early stages, and you're messing about and just seeing the fun and everything. And I think, I think we've got to connect to that in not only in our passion, but all parts of life. So, really, really resonate with that. We'll jump into the closing traditions.
Yeah.
So, as you might be aware already, we've got the first 2, which are routine. They're asked every week. And then the third question is asked by a member of the Growth Voyage community.
Okay.
First one, nice and simple. And I'm interested in hearing your answer here. But it's a song suggestion.
Song suggestion.
Yeah.
Ah, interesting. Okay. Caustic Love, I think, by Paolo Nutini.
Okay.
Powerful. You've not heard it, right?
No, but I'm going to.
Yeah.
I'm going to. That's. Yeah.
I think it's Caustic Love. I'm going to just double check. Yeah. A great artist. I tell a lie, it's not Caustic Love. It's Iron Sky.
Iron.
Yeah. Check out Iron Sky.
Iron the Sky.
Iron.
Oh,
as
Iron.
in, yeah.
Iron Sky.
Iron Sky.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, that's the one. Paolo Nutini.
Okay.
That's a great song. Powerful. Very good.
Yeah.
Love it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it was again, I was intrigued because of the like different tunes that come up while we're sparring. And there's like loads of different like classics in there.
Yeah.
And where you're like, oh yeah, I completely forgot about this song. But
Yeah.
it's like one of those like forgotten, it's like playlists where it's like forgotten songs. And it's it's cool to listen to. I'll check out that one. Second one, it's a book recommendation.
Book recommendation, there's many, but the one I would highly recommend for everyone to read would be Legacy by what's his name? Mark? Is it Mark? No. Yeah, Legacy. Legacy is the one. It's about the All Blacks. So it's about the All Blacks and kind of their rise back to fame. That's the book that I actually, when I was out in Brazil, I bought that book for the instructors, a guy called Caio Nunes, who I was training with at Alliance. I bought that book for him in Portuguese. It's Legado, it's Legacy, and it's, I'm just trying to see who it's by. Here it is. James Kerr, great book. So it touches on a lot of things with life and building a team and attributing certain mental states to even just putting on a shirt, how your whole mindset concept can change. And also he talks, and there's a section in there that he refers to in terms of keeping the team strong called no dickheads. Not allowing certain people in that will spoil the dynamic of what is already created.
Oh, well, that's essentially what you live by, right?
Essentially, yeah.
With your community.
So it resonated a lot for me.
Yeah. And I was even on a call with someone the other day, and she does the same. I think it's the same prayer. I don't know if it's every meeting she has or start of the week or start of the day, but it's like an anti-arsehole prayer. So
right.
She prays that, right, just don't let any arseholes into my life. And she said it's worked. So she's built this like really big community and is able to just actually advertise it to everyone. And people join, and she said that prayer's just worked.
Brilliant.
Like no one's come in, no one's
amazing.
It's like a magnet.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, it's great to hear when things like that, really work out. That's awesome.
Well, we'll put that book in the description.
Yeah.
And the final one, it's asked by a member of the Growth Voyage community.
Okay.
And this one comes in from Simon Roth.
Uh-huh.
And he asks, what hard time led to the biggest or most impactful hidden opportunity?
In terms of opportunity, opportunity is a difficult one because in terms of growth, personal growth, or in terms of business growth. So if I were to talk about personal growth, the hardest time is always a divorce. It's difficult. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a build up. Anyway, there's loads. But in terms of pinpointing one particular area, it's going to be divorce. And I'm sure, and I'm not just speaking for myself either. It's probably fair to assume that actually, even for her, initially after the wind stops blowing and the carnage has settled, and you find that your life is going to change. I feel like growth has happened massively for the both of us. Even though we're on separate paths, for me, that was the biggest growth. So as much as it feels like maybe to some it was maybe a failure or something that was in many ways, you've not completed something, you've not seen it through to the end, or sometimes there's an element of knowing when to let go, when to change direction, and that will eventually amount in massive amounts of growth. Of course, it comes with the struggle. We said this before, but in terms of personal growth, I do believe that was one of the catalysts, because had it not have been for that, I would not have been then again, with Gemma and blah, blah, and gone even further forward still and been here today. So I take all of that as a silver lining in many ways, even though at the time you've got to weather the storm and it can break you. In terms of the business, really was taking the decision to leave Barnet Combat, because I left with nothing on both sides. I had nowhere to live, plus I had no business. So we always joke with Gemma, and I say, it's funny, isn't it? Within 6 months of meeting you, I wrote off my car, I lost my business, and I lost my house. I said, and we're still here. So, it was only up from there on in, So, yeah. So Simon's nailed it. He's put me on the spot. But yeah, those two events, I think, were the biggest events for me. And, instead of sitting here moping around the fact that they happened or, they're silver linings for sure. Massive.
Oh, yeah. Big fucking silver lining by the sounds of it.
Yeah.
I mean, again, it's just a reminder, isn't it? No matter how tough things get, it is quite literally part of that path that you're forging for yourself, part of that journey. And I think the real struggle is, especially if you've got this like never give up mentality, to actually go, okay, you know what? It's not giving up, but this is just not the right path for me. And I'm going to pivot a bit. And I think that's, I think that comes back to your adaptability. It's been mentioned on the podcast before. Like, are you adaptable? Are you willing to break your identity or this part of you and then form into someone else and form a new life? So, you're a wicked example of that.
Oh, thanks, bro.
I think very inspiring for a lot of guys who are, pivoted their business or a relationship or can't make ends meet currently. It's so much gold in there, not just the ability to come back from those, but also that kind of the mindset that you've had throughout it all as well, and seeing the world through these childlike eyes. I think is certainly very inspiring.
And just before we close off, like I'd like to, eventually it would be wrong for me to not say, but I'd want the same for the kids. I know I call them kids, and when one's 25 and one's 21, but I'd like them to kind of find their path and eventually return to the playground. I would never want to force a return to the playground too soon, because those learning journeys have to happen, and it's their journey. I don't want to take that away from them, but eventually I want them to understand maybe, or realize that the real path to happiness is going back to those roots and finding the happiness that you had there, which was unadulterated, pure, genuine happiness, going back to what it was that made you happy. Find that transition. And in between, you improvise.
Well, how do you get back to that? It's by going through the challenges, isn't it?
For sure. And lastly, just if anyone wants to follow someone on Instagram, if you could give a little follow to Remote Rescues, because that's Gemma's, that's the Instagram handle that we've set up for saving strays, cats, injured cats, cats that have been abandoned, abused, all around the world. So Gemma's set this remote rescues up. She's doing a lot of work with them at the moment, and we'll be running monthly or 6 weekly open mats at the Academy just to fundraise for that kind of stuff. So it's just a tenner to come in, like a normal open mat, but instead of it coming to us as an academy, it will go straight to the rescue facilities and the people that work with these animals. Yeah.
Jen, do you have a link or a fundraising link as well?
Yeah, I can probably we're in the process of setting up a fundraising link at the moment. This is the first one. I literally did it on the last week's notice. So we're putting out Gemma's PayPal, which isn't ideal, but we're putting out Gemma's PayPal to pay into as friends and family, because it's a donation. And then that goes direct to the rescue. And then for next time, we'll have a proper link set up for the next event. And it will just be, you just pay in there, leave a name, and then just turn up on the door on the open mat. And then all 100% of the proceeds, we take nothing, goes all to the charity. So
Wicked.
Remote rescues.
Yeah,
that's the one.
We'll put this in the description as well. And I guess if people are interested in joining the Resistance or want to contact yourself.
Yeah, so if you want to contact the Resistance, or you can catch me on best place is Instagram, because my number's on there, as is the website. So it's the Resistance, _resistance, I think it is .co.uk. But if you just Google the Resistance BJJ, will come up. And the Resistance LDN is our Insta handle. You can WhatsApp me. You can book a trial class. You can go to our the little tab you have on the top, our link tree. So you can go onto our Instagram, click on the link tree, grab a trial class. Once you've done that, just come down. Literally, just don't even just grab one. Grab a trial class, book yourself in, come down, and if the energy's good, you'll know. And if it's not, then maybe there's other clubs that I can recommend in and around that, maybe a better fit. Just get into jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Do that.
Damn straight. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Ricky, thank you, Ibby.
Thank you, Harrison, for having me. I appreciate you. And I'll see you on the mats for sure.
Appreciate it, brother.
Nice one. Thank you.